Let's bring in my Friday night regular, former Queensland Premier Campbell Newman. I'll get on to Anthony Albanese in general in a moment, but you would have seen what I said at the beginning. You saw Peter there. We had Jack Keane on last night. Do you get a sense the Prime Minister is not interested in spending a lot of money on defence?
Well, absolutely. I don't think it sort of aligns with his worldview. He is still the left-wing student radical. That's what I've concluded these days. And I'm sad to say that because, you know, years ago when I was Lord Mayor of Brisbane, you know, I had a very productive working relationship with him. And I can't say enough how disappointed about the way he's conducted himself in the office. You know, these are very challenging times. We do need to muscle up and actually take care of our own defence. And I'd put it like this as well. If you don't want to actually sort of kowtow to the Americans, why not actually increase defence spending and actually have a policy of self-reliance? If you've got to spend the money, Australia's going to be sanctioned by the US if we don't get with the program. So why not, if you're a left-winger, have a program of independent self-reliance and try and do what, you know, the Israelis have done. You know, I know they've been backed up by the United States, but, you know, they pack a huge amount of punch for money that I'm told is you know, not the same as the Australian Defence Force. It's less than it.
As Lord Mayor and Premier, you always understood the importance of strong messaging. I mean, I just don't get... I mean, like you, personally, I've had great relationships with Anthony Albanese, both in the media and interviewing, and I've had lunch with him once in a social sense, and he's a very entertaining bloke. But why does he persist on standing out in the street with nodding heads behind him, making comments about something as important as national defence and the defence of our country? Why doesn't he go into a studio and sit down and do a serious interview? Or why doesn't he, you know, make an address to the nation or something with a bit more gravitas than standing out in the street launching something in some suburb somewhere?
Yeah, I think so. And this has got so serious now that I believe he can't continue to just fob it off. In fact, I'm really surprised that, you know, we're sort of in yet another day where this is going on. Because it's got beyond a joke. I think it's actually hurting him, even though he might think that, you know, he ultimately, and that was an interesting theory from Peter, that he wants to have a fight with Trump. Well, that might work for his base, but it doesn't work for, you know, the right in Australia. It doesn't work for Conservatives, and it doesn't work for people in the middle, who I think, you know, those are the, you know, those swing voters. So, you know, it's time to wake up that it's really going to hurt him and his government. But look, more importantly, it's about Australia's future, and I feel dreadfully exposed today in terms of where we are with our Defence Force. And by the way, our Defence Force is in urgent need for reform. It needs a bolt of electricity through it. Uniform people, the bureaucrats, of course. There needs to be a sense of urgency that just isn't there at the moment. To actually refocus, do more with less, to actually advocate for the right weapon systems and capabilities, and know that they have to deliver them not in years as they have through the 80s and 90s, but immediately. They have to really take some risks and do some things that they just culturally are incapable of doing at the moment.
Yeah, I agree with you completely. Look, the Prime Minister during the election campaign ran around the country saying he'd had this plan in place. It's called Made in Australia. So it was largely based around the whole net zero and you know, green energy and green hydrogen and all that stuff. But what about this? There's an oil platform off the Northern Territory, off the coast of Darwin, called the Northern Endeavour. It's been shut down for years. It needs to be dismantled and torn apart and, I presume, used for waste. Are we going to do it in Australia? No. 2 Australian companies, Campbell, bid for this job, but we've ended up giving the contract to some shipyard in Denmark. I mean, if we're going to be serious about what happened to, you know, future made in Australia, wouldn't this be a good example of what to do?
Well, it would be a good opportunity to try and foster, you know, a rebuilding, if you like, of that sort of capability in Australia. But And really, you know, you'd have hoped the government, if it was serious, would have at least leaned on the side of trying to award the gig to an Australian company. And that's why the unions and the businesses concerned are up in arms. But the flip side of it is this country is damn expensive. It is also full of green and red tape. And it's no surprise to me, sadly, that a job like this goes the other side of the world to Denmark. So they're going to tow this thing by tugs all the way across the world, through the Suez Canal to Denmark to be dismantled, because the Australian enterprises can't compete, you've got to imagine. And that just speaks volumes about what productivity reform really needs, what really means in this country and what we do need. And, you know, all we've seen the last 3 years are measures that have, you know, made us less competitive and less productive. And this is where the rubber hits the road. If you want manufacturing, and this is a form of manufacturing, ripping apart this vessel, then you need to actually be internationally competitive. So it really is a very, you know, important lesson for us all about what's really going on. I mean, we're offshoring the manufacture of you know, toilet tissue these days. I mean, it's just ridiculous.
It's a great point, and they should have used that oil platform as a really good example of what we could do by bringing stuff back to be made here, or taken apart here even. Campbell, great to see you, mate. Have a good weekend. I'll talk to you next week.